Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
What's up, everyone? It's Greg, your host of the Opportunity and Empire Flipper Show. And today I am talking to Kurt Elster, who hosts the Unofficial Shopify Podcast, also an agency owner over at EtherCycle, and has his own personal brand newsletter as well. All things Shopify, all things content creation. So I was on Kurt's podcast a few weeks back. I really enjoyed it, and that just went live. So go check out Kurt's channel if you haven't. But I invited him on to talk more about Shopify and content. And we talk a little bit about everything. I think Kurt is a bit of just like a deep well of Shopify knowledge. So one thing that we did talk about that might be very relevant to a lot of people in our audience is if you are an Amazon FBA seller, like if you ever tried to go with Shopify, even though maybe you have a very successful FBA store and you try to move to Shopify and you just never really found a lot of success with that. Kurt and I talk a little bit about that and a little bit about what you can do so you can use Amazon, how a lot of Kurt's clients use Amazon, which is just a traffic acquisition channel rather than being your full business, right? So that's something that I'm very excited about. Maybe we'll bring Kurt on to do an even deeper conversation on, because I think that'd be very relevant to a lot of people in the audience. But with that said, enough of me talking. Let's get into the podcast. I think you're going to really enjoy this one. I'll see you on the other side. All right, I got Kurt Elster here with me, the host of the Unofficial Shopify Podcast, which I had the honor of going on a few weeks ago and just went live. And I thought, shit, we should get Kurt on here. Kurt knows like everything there is to know about Shopify. So Kurt, for my friends in the audience that, have not heard of your podcast, don't know you, why don't you introduce yourself real quick about what you do and where you're at in the world?
Sure. Well, I'm in the lovely Midwest, the Chicago metro area, where I was born and raised, but I've been doing e-commerce my entire adult life, and starting with eBay as a teenager before, I even should have had an account, and then discovered Shopify. And in 2014, wanted to, when we had decided let's just go all in, do only Shopify, because we had been doing WordPress and all kinds of e-commerce stuff as an agency. And then from there said, all right, we're just going to do Shopify only. And, I'm a weird, awkward man. And so I needed a way to get leads, without breathing into a paper bag, trying to do cold calling or whatever it is. And so I thought a podcast would be the way to do it. Only I had listened to a podcast, really had no business doing it. But after 10 years of that, figured it out. And, 2-point-something million downloads later, it seems to have worked out all right.
That is awesome, man. I always say podcasts are like a sleeper way to get clients, just interview your ideal prospect, right, on the podcast. You're building all this rapport. But yeah, I really enjoyed being on your podcast. So definitely recommend anyone in my audience to check it out. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. You have a very good podcast, which not many business podcasts can I say that about. So.
Yeah, doing it long enough, it's I also get bored. So try to keep it entertaining.
Yeah. So you started in Shopify. So I didn't realize you were into it for that long. 2014, that's pretty much if not at the start, pretty close to the start of Shopify now.
Yeah, we joined the partner program in 2012.
Wow.
And so that back when you could be a Shopify expert. We're a Shopify expert because I had a friend with a bike shop and he's like, I hate my website. It's hard to use. And I said, well, there's a thing called Shopify. We should probably check that out. And, just not knowing what I didn't know, we said, how hard could this be? And I just went and designed a Shopify theme, and then my business partner built it. And not long after that, I got an email from Shopify, a man named Dan Evelet, who ran the partner program back then. And he was like, oh, we saw you build a custom theme. You should join our Shopify Experts program. That's how small it was. And that theme was live until last year. That theme made it. Yeah,
Talk
decade.
About evergreen. That's multiple lifetimes in internet marketing land.
Yeah, it's for a local bike shop. It didn't have to be anything crazy.
Fair.
But yeah, it made it a long time. I was thrilled. And then, so we do this Shopify Experts thing. First lead I get through it and we end up selling is Bandon Dunes Golf Course. So anybody who's into golf will appreciate that one. That was our second Shopify project. And after that, it just, it snowballed. But I think it was, by like the third or fourth one, I'm like, all right, let's just stick with this. And part of it was because it was easier. We had been doing WordPress. I had done some Magento stuff. We'd done BigCommerce. I felt comfortable saying we had tried all the major ones at the time, like PrestaShop. And Shopify was the one where it's like, okay, back then it was more limited. Today, I don't have that feeling at all. But 10 years ago, it's different. It's early. But it was really well documented. And they were clearly so genuinely invested in, let's build a partner ecosystem and community. And those two things, like, yeah, the software's great, but then on top of it, you had a phenomenal ecosystem, a company clearly that recognizes that and never stopped, still does, has been tremendously helpful to myself and my colleagues, and the documentation. Oh my gosh, life gets so much easier when things are actually properly documented. That alone, I'm like, okay, sold. Like, why are we doing anything else?
You obviously have a lot more design and coding skills than I do, but we've sold Magento sites on Empire Flippers, and obviously we sold Shopify. And man, it's night and day difference in terms of, like, from our perspective of migrating a Shopify store versus a Magento store. It's just like, okay, every step requires a developer from Magento. Like, on our team, can't do anything. Like, all right, we think that this is right. Yes. So I get you on the documentation part. So with you being, basically at the birth of Shopify, you must have seen quite a lot of evolution. Talk to me a bit about how e-commerce stores in the last decade or so have evolved in the market.
Well, early on, you did not have the breadth of stores. There was less diversity because a lot of it was print on demand. And then a lot of it was drop ship. And so you could always recognize those stores. And sure, they were successful. And there were fewer stores, so there's less competition. And advertising was easier because major brands had not yet gotten into Facebook ads. That was like this goofy small business thing. Walmart, BMW, whoever else would have never even considered a Facebook ad. Ludicrous, right? And so the ads were a lot cheaper. The targeting wasn't as good, and just much less competition unless you were in, until drop shipping and t-shirts got saturated. And from there, you start seeing bigger brands get into this, and you start seeing manufacturers start building storefronts and going direct to consumer. Oh, that's a big change. And then you start seeing big brands, Fortune 500 brands are like, hey, why are we not doing digital advertising at scale? And that's suddenly, now prices start going up on the ads, and competition starts getting more fierce among stores as you've got other people start noticing and go, wait, why am I not just spinning up a dropship store? Why am I not just creating, I could, fire up Photoshop and go sell some print on demand t-shirts. And so those stores became very competitive. But then at the same time, all these features being born to support those folks are getting applied to these bigger, older brands that are going, hey, why not us? Why are we not doing this? And then at the same time, you've got shows like Shark Tank are really just taking off. And at Shark Tank, you hear Shopify comes up a lot. It's very clear that these businesses that are getting investment or have great ideas and pitch them and don't necessarily get investment, but it's still interesting. Majority of them, at least when you're watching Shark Tank, really it feels like, the Shopify is the common thread here. And part of that is that ecosystem. Part of that is their focus on, they're as much a software company as they are a entrepreneurship evangelist, right?
Yeah.
For profit, of course, but it has worked out very well. Similar approach to, Elon Musk at Tesla, where early on, I don't know if he says it anymore, but he used to famously say, Tesla's a software company that makes cars. And I think, Shopify was very serious about hey, we enable entrepreneurship. Also, it's a software company.
Yeah, that makes total sense, man. And you're bringing me back to talking about the t-shirts. I remember with the Teespring Shopify stores, that was such a rage. We actually sold quite a lot of those. But to your point, I remember, so I joined EF 2016, right? And back then, we could barely sell any website for more than 2x of their annual EBITDA. because like no one trusted, like, what is this digital business?
Yeah.
Like digital, like, like that's amateurs, it's side hustle type of stuff, right? And then in 2020, like private equity caught on, like, oh, we want all of this. I just started like raising hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah,
to
so
acquire
like, wait,
e-commerce,
it's
right?
got low operating expense and we don't have to pay for retail locations?
no,
Oh my.
no rent, no dying malls. Right. Yeah. So it's been a wild side to see that from an M&A perspective, much less like the business maturity perspective. So with all the clients you have and, your breadth of experience, I'm sure this is something you see probably over and over again as an agency owner. But let's say I want to become a Shopify store owner. I got a great e-commerce idea. Like, what would you tell me is the most common mistakes that I would make as a Shopify store owner, or in general as an e-commerce store owner?
I'll be like, hey, how big's your email list?
You sound like me.
Because it's always like it's just a new client application form on our agency website. It's just like you fill it out for a 30-minute consultation and then I get the request. And from experience, I know if it is an established store, whether that's on Shopify or not, whether it looks good or not, doesn't matter. That store may or may not be successful, right? But it could be ugly and on a terrible platform that they hate and still be very successful. Someone who says, hey, we got this idea that we're going to build, but they don't have a list. They don't have an audience. That's who's going to struggle because you're putting the cart before the horse. If you're like, hey, I got this great idea, let's just build it, and then we'll figure out who we're going to sell it to and how. Well, this is all going to be very expensive. Like you're not building an asset here. You're building a liability, right? Like the deeper you get into building that business, just the more debt you're accruing. But if you have an audience, you have people who you speak to that are going, yeah, we want to buy from you. We are willing to buy from you. Just give us the reason, right? Okay, those are the businesses that are going to be successful. And that's why you often see like content creators are the successful ones because they spent so much time building an audience and understanding them and knowing them. Like content creators, often the successful ones are quite protective of them, right? They don't necessarily want to be advertising. They don't want to have to take those sponsorship deals, but also at the very time because they got to get paid. And so building a brand that can sell something that everybody is passionate about, right? That Venn diagram of the creator and the audience is excited about it. That's what you want. But I mean, as much or more effort will have gone into or should have gone into the audience building, which also means brand building, that building that social media channel, understanding that audience. And then, okay, now let's try and build something to sell. That I think is the big mistake. And then also people jump straight into like, this is my very first website. I'm opening up with, let's spend 50 grand on custom design for a website. No, don't do it. Don't do it because you don't, like, until you've built it and tried it, you don't know what you want. Like build the easy version first, go a little cheap on it. And then like that, you have a better understanding and sense of, okay, this is what we want. This is what works. This is what turns out it doesn't, we thought was important, but isn't. And then, once you've worked with that 12 months, spend the money, build the fancy site. And so like, I get the idea of buy once, cry once. Like, hey, can we just throw the money at it up front and just get everything right on the first go? I appreciate that thinking, but there's just a lot of trial and error and testing in business and marketing. And, ultimately it's an investment. All investment carries risk. And I think the way you mitigate that risk is by working iteratively.
Oh, dude, 100%, 100%. Like I tell people all the time, like you buy a business from me, I might change your life, but that might be really negatively. Like that business goes to shit, like Google update, a Facebook ban or whatever, right? Like there's so much risk with everything we do. I realized the mistake in how I asked that question. I meant to say, because instead of like someone just starting off, like what does one that's looking good that's coming, and what are those mistakes? But you have now sidetracked me because I have another question. So I'm curious on your thoughts on this. I used to believe, and I probably still do a little bit, that a creator, like if you're going to start a business, you should build that audience. Because to me, an audience is like the second most important thing in business, which is like the customer lifecycle data, right? Like obviously you need to make profit, then it's audience, and then it's revenue. But revenue to me is like more of a vanity metric in a lot of ways. So, but I've kind of come around to this other way of thinking where a lot of people, they want to build an audience, like say a personal brand, right? But they don't really have any reason to have a personal brand. Like they haven't really done anything yet. So I'm curious on your thoughts. Like if someone was going to start a Shopify store, instead of building an audience and going through the the trial and error, because building content can be tough as well. Would they be better off trying to do little tiny spends to see how people react to certain product ideas or wait lists or Kickstarters or something like that? That it's still cheap, right? It's not the $50,000 website design, but just to see if they have what it takes to like tap into the audience before they start building out all this content. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do like Kickstarter a lot. And it's what we were talking about, like what's changed. I mean, back 2015, that was like Kickstarter golden age, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we all made some purchases off Kickstarter that may or may not have actually been delivered. And they warned us about that. We knew.
100% hit on mine so far.
Yeah. I only had one that I got stiffed on, and like 3 years later, I got a refund. I was quite pleasantly surprised by it.
That's nice.
It was for a GPS tracker for a bike, which years later, it's like, we have air tags. I do this now. But all right, you sidetracked me. But no, I think I like the Kickstarter idea a lot. But that's another one where I think people underestimate the amount of work that goes into a Kickstarter. I've interviewed enough people who started with successful Kickstarters that they're like, yeah, it's a full-time job for a month, promoting that thing, keeping it going. And then the difficult part of selling physical goods, especially in e-commerce and retail, is cash flow. I need the cash to buy the product, to sell it, so that I could buy more product to sell. Like, it's this endless cycle.
It's an endless cycle, yeah.
Kickstarter, like, okay, you did it. You got the funds. Now you have to deliver those goods. And then you got to do that again. And so it's like, I think there's the time to get the Kickstarter going. But you're right. I think it defangs a lot of the risk of the proposition. And then from there, you really need to have a plan for what's next, both on like, hey, how are we going to manufacture this thing? How are we going to pay for it if things go wrong? Because unexpected things happen, or you end up, getting hosed by a manufacturer. I've seen it happen enough times. It's like, hey, we built all these backpacks and they got delivered and none of the zippers work. Now what? That kind of thing. You hear stories about that. And heck, that happened to Kim Kardashian with Skims. They had to like relabel a whole bunch of product that got delivered. I think the labels were wrong, something to that effect. Anyway, anything you could do to reduce that risk. So I like Kickstarter for that. Even simpler, I've seen people try and like do gauge interest with, you do like a pre-order page for a product that you want to make, but just have them sign up for the email list. Just be like, hey, be notified when this is available. But like everything about that page suggests like, this is really something you're going to build. Like you want it to feel serious, not something you threw together. So same level of effort as putting together a Kickstarter campaign, but it's a pre-order wait list. Aha, now we're building that audience. Now we're validating the idea before we even have really had to put in like significant revenue. It's once we get into manufacturing or like, zany custom branding, that's where we're going to start spending money. Or, the other problem with digital marketing, PPC, the sky's the limit on how much money you want to spend. No point is Zuckerberg going to be like, okay, buddy, that's enough. I'm cutting you off.
You're making me
just going to keep taking, right? The man's got a compound to build in Hawaii. So I like that method. I've seen people, may not necessarily trust the email only audience building. So you see if you can get people to place a deposit for a pre-order. Now, once you've accepted money, obviously you either need to deliver a good or refund them the money. And so I've heard people suggest like, oh, well, take 10 orders. Like if you can get 10 orders of people actually paying for it, then be like, hey, sorry, we can't fulfill it and refund them. I don't love that idea because you knew you were never going to fulfill that thing to begin with. Yeah. Like I get why. That one just a little sketchy. So I don't necessarily endorse it.
I have been one to endorse that strategy before. The way I've always pitched it, and I totally get the other side of it. The way I pitched it for a digital product, though, like if you're building a digital product where it's like, it's relatively easy for you to make, right? You're not talking to like factories or whatever. Then you give the product to those 10 people or whatever for free. And they would be like your first testimonials. No, I totally get the other side of what you're saying. I don't think I would
you're giving it for free.
Product. Yeah.
So I think no issue on that, on your approach. That's probably better.
Thank you. That's right. The cycle.
I've been hammering on retail product, selling a physical good, but digital goods. Oh man, my favorite, because it's like 99% profit. There's no breakage. It delivers instantly. It's really easy to have a refund policy when you're not trying to get the product back and you're not out the money. The worst, you lose the transaction fee. Not a big deal to keep someone happy.
Do you see a lot of digital products on Shopify?
Do I see a lot? No. Have I worked with some very successful digital product businesses? Absolutely. And the crazy part is they didn't even use anything fancy for years. Like one of the original apps for Shopify was a digital downloads tool that they made. And you just attach a file to what the product is, and Shopify knows it's digital. And then when they place the order, it's like, hey, here's the link, just delivers it. And then there's like all kinds of third-party services that'll do fancier versions of that. Now, the only downside to digital download products, piracy. I mean, I used to sell a lot of digital download products, and they weren't even huge. They weren't popular. They were successful. I made money off of them. Every one of them got pirated. Like, it's inevitable. It's crazy.
Yeah. I have info product friends who try to put like special cookies, like rearrange things. Who like
good luck.
Who's pirating. There was a study, I think it was by Kindlepreneur. So the Kindle has like I forget what it's called, some DMARC or something like that to prevent piracy. And they studied using the bestseller ranking of like who has the piracy protection and who doesn't. And every time the person who doesn't have it made more money. And the rationale was like, because most people don't want to like steal from you. If they get the pirated version, they like it. They often go or tell friends, or they'll go and buy it themselves after they pirated it, So I thought that was quite funny. Like the piracy actually fueled their word of mouth to sell more novels.
Oh, well, I think the other way around, the anti-piracy measures can also punish people who bought it and are trying to use it legitimately.
Oh, for
You're just
sure.
adding extra steps for your legitimate users. And most of those anti-piracy measures are like trivial for the even mildly experienced teen pirate to remove. Like at PDFs, it's like, oh, we stamp their email address on. Man, PDF preview, like Adobe Acrobat will just remove that for you. It's a password protected PDF. There are websites, you just upload your PDF for free and it'll strip the password out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's hopeless.
Yeah. Well, I want to get back to audience building. So we talked about...
let's continue on piracy.
That's all I know about piracy. Other than back in the day, I did get a lot of viruses from Kazaa. That was like my... or LimeWire. LimeWire and Kazaa.
LimeWire and Kazaa.
I always tried to download like some punk rock music and like, oh, you got a Trojan horse style. Like, So I've never been a very good pirate. I still don't know how to use torrents, actually. I'm like, I look at them like, man, I'm having like PTSD from the LimeWire days. I don't want to like touch these.
Yeah, I doubt any pirate site is particularly legitimate. It's for the best.
Yeah. But when you talk about building an audience, so when I think about it, I'm thinking about organic content like SEO, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. But when you're talking about building an audience, like for this new Shopify store, or maybe even one who is established, like how would you go about building an audience for an e-commerce store?
It's kind of funny. When I've talked to people who have, like, they're bootstrapping, oftentimes the place where they really like start to see traction and success is local events. So like grassroots marketing. I knew a guy who was selling, I think it was like race car t-shirts. It was like some motorsports thing. So he would go to like set up a table at a local track and on weekends, and people would show up. And the magic of it is you are talking to your potential customers face to face, and it's like real time. You are going to hone your pitch and get feedback. And for the people who do buy, like that is much more cemented in their brain. They talk to a person face to face who actually made that product and they made that purchase, and it was like an investment in their local community. It is just much more impactful than I clicked buy on a website while sitting on my couch at 8 p.m. Right? It's very different. And so I know it doesn't scale. I know you're not going to get rich going to local events. I know you probably think it's a pain in the ass, but it's inexpensive. Like our local flea market, Wolf's Flea Market, for anyone who's in Chicago, just huge. It's $20 for a table. And you see all kinds of people there. All kinds, right? And oftentimes, like I'll talk to people and turns out like they'll have a small retail store. They have a Shopify store. And they're like, yeah, but we do all our business, on Sundays at the flea market. And because it's like it's a marketplace. It's similar to going on Amazon. Those people are there because they want to shop, because they are looking for something new and novel, right? And I think that's also the advantage to marketplaces. But these physical in-person appearances and grassroots events and expos, those really early on, I think quite tremendous. And the other thing I've seen no one do is like put out a clipboard to gather emails, or an iPad that's like nailed down to collect emails. Really low risk to just try and build an email list that way as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting on local fairs. It reminds me of during the pandemic, there was a bakery. I can't remember the name, but it was in Boston, I believe. And they used to sell like cupcakes to a bunch of corporate clients. And then pandemic shut everything down. She turned her bakery into a Shopify store and just crushed it, like did way better than she ever was. And she just told her clients about it basically and spread through word of mouth with all the employees of these different companies, start ordering it themselves as well. And eventually she was like, people were buying merch because it became like a staple of Boston, this like bakery where like you're proud to wear this like shirt of this bakery, you know?
Yeah, because it was like a local institution.
Yeah, yeah. Like with your clients, do you see a lot of this like using local to kind of like build that community for a brand and then that translates into something that eventually scales a bit better, like gets the wheels kind of going, or like what's the next step up?
Early on, you see a fair number of, and obviously like it depends what you sell, but early on a lot of people do these local events to get the word out. But I think, the other advantage to it too is you are honing your message. You are getting real-time feedback of people asking questions, and then you have to bust those objections. And so you really get a good sense of like what that online marketing copy should be based on this actual feedback, versus if you've never talked to anybody or only talked to a handful of people, you're kind of working in a silo and you're probably writing like really stilted, goofy marketing copy. Like here at Acme Corp, we value like, oh God, stop. If it starts with here at, just give up. Just go hire a copywriter. You already messed this up.
This is, I sell to entrepreneurs and they tend to have a marketing background. I always do like tongue-in-cheek copywriting, like one trick to lose your business. Click here to find out how, like, but they obviously know what I do, right? Like I will sell their business, hence the joke. I love using the copywriting jargon of like the great direct response, the dark lords of marketing, in my view, too, is a joke to get entrepreneurs to get wealthy through me. But I think that's great advice, man. I would say in my own personal experience at EF, like going to different conferences, massive help talking to people like on the ground and stuff. So yeah, I agree. I think that's great advice. What else would you do to build an audience? So you have the local fair, translating that into email lists. Is there a digital avenue as well you'd recommend for someone to start with?
Well, I spent a lot of time on Reddit, and Reddit very allergic to any kind of marketing.
They are.
But there are some people who spend the time are clearly genuinely engaging and interested in the community and gain their trust first, and then are like, hey, by working in public to uncover like some pain or problem and then propose an alternate solution, you can get that to work. And this can also work in Facebook groups. It can work in forums where like you have first established yourself as an authority. I think that's the critical trick. People trying to sell first, it doesn't work because it's like, I don't know you, I don't trust you. Who wants to be pitched? Versus you're an authority on this topic, and so I trust you. And then phase two, you are publicly exploring, hey, what are the pains or problems? Like, how can we fix this? How can we make whatever this is better? And then from there, all right, I've got it. And who's interested in this? Who wants to help me test it? So now you've really got them invested in this idea. And from there, okay, hey, let's try and get a Kickstarter going. I found this manufacturer. We can get these made. It's going to cost this much, but I need your help. And, help me promote this Kickstarter. We've seen that happen in work. There's a guy I interviewed probably like 10 years ago who sells watch straps. I think it's Blue Shark straps. Just last year, I went on Amazon and I was looking for a strap, and sure enough, Blue Shark straps. Guy's still around. But he started in I think it's a watch strap community on Reddit, because of course there's a watch strap community on Reddit, right? And then
I love the internet, how niche it can become.
Yeah. And the example I gave, that wasn't off the top of my head. That's what he did in a subreddit about watch straps. And then, 8-10 years later, still very successful online. And I'm still wearing one of those watch straps. Not at the moment.
This is a product that endures.
I have it it's on a Swatch watch.
That's awesome. On the Reddit thing, so I'm a marketer, right? I resonate with my people, which is every time we post on Reddit, it's like massive anxiety. Like, I swear I'm not trying to sell to you.
Oh yeah, no, they do not like it.
Yeah, I get asked. I feel like a lot of marketers or would-be marketers, would-be entrepreneurs, they really miss the boat by trying to do direct sales a lot of the time. Like, there's so much bigger advantage of just like calm down, like don't talk about yourself, just like help, and then they come, right? I had a guy, he sold a business with me. I might have even brought it up on your podcast for like $1 million, right? And I asked him like, well, why did you finally like, circle into EF? He's like, your poetry on Facebook. Like it's just over the years, he sees like some of my marketing stuff, then he sees my poem. The poem always reminds him of EF. And even though the poem has nothing to do with EF, like I write like dark Victorian, like dark romanticism stuff, I'm a big literature nerd, but it works, man. Like a lot of people, I feel like they try to go for the kill too quick instead of just adding value into the audience, right?
No, absolutely. And then I think the other one, of course, is marketplaces. Like a lot of businesses, like you've got, once you're far enough along, I think adding a marketplace like Amazon early on is helpful because, like you're paying a lot in fulfillment and, getting Amazon to actually sell your stuff. It's not cheap and it comes with its own set of headaches. But what you're paying for, both in the stress, time, and money that costs you, is not having to advertise nearly as much. You're getting this audience built in. And I'm oversimplifying Amazon, it's its own competitive marketplace. But I think that can also be a good place to cut your teeth, to get the initial traction in customers and feedback. And also really like Amazon is so dependent on your product listing. Like you have a product listing and that's that, and you got to get it right, plus the reviews. And so if you could really, it's a good place to try and dial in that product description and that pitch and that selling proposition, and then applying that same content and style to your own website.
I'm glad you brought up Amazon. So I'm curious, with your experience, have you had a lot of, say, pure Amazon FBA, like Amazon sellers? They don't really have a Shopify presence. Have you helped them start a Shopify presence, and did it go well? And then the second part of that question is, have you helped Shopify people start an Amazon presence, and how did that go?
Well, we've had Shopify, like people who are purely Shopify, then what they'll often do is like if they're already successful on Shopify, they'll add Amazon, but it's more about having like a presence and discoverability on there, and they'll just do like a hero product or a few products. They won't do the whole catalog. And because it's an acquisition channel, then it's like, I could sell the product, but it's still Amazon's customer. But depending on what I sell, hopefully maybe there's like a pack in, maybe there's a reason that they will then come and buy directly from me after the fact. So I like that strategy. Just like, I think it's advantageous to have a presence on this giant marketplace, right? But for the people who start purely on Amazon and then transition to Shopify in addition to it, I think sometimes they struggle because they're just thin on story, on content, on brand, right? Like everything is these very salesy. You could recognize that Amazon style copy and it's effective, but when like
title,
yeah, but when it's like when the product listings purely look like that, but then there's really no like branding story, like supporting content around it, it looks a little strange. I think like they'll make sales, but those sales are generally going to be people who were buying on Amazon and just switch to buying direct on the website, which you want. Like you're going to keep a larger percentage of profit that way. But I think like they just end up missing, and they develop it over time. Like they figure it out, but there's just all this ancillary content, just like support, FAQ, your story, logos. There's a lot of like bonus nonsense that comes along with having your own web presence that you just don't think about if you've only done Amazon.
Yeah, I agree. And what you said earlier, I think is so key. Like, so we have a lot of Amazon FBA sellers that listen to this podcast. And for years, I've been telling them, like, you need to get off of Amazon, like not completely, but like, to migrate to a DTC business where you have the whole customer lifecycle. And I feel like a lot of them struggle because they're so used to getting all these customers coming in from Amazon. Like, not saying it's easy by any means, but it's a little bit less complicated than, say, your own like full blown DTC funnel a lot of the times. And they just don't want to do it. And then, Amazon just announced new fees. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? You got to say yes to like, yes, of course, I would love to pay these fees because like you don't have anything else. Like it's not an attribution channel. It's like your actual entire business channel, right? So I always tell people that you should diversify that. What would be your tips for someone who is an FBA seller who's like, man, I'm sick of these fees. I want to, like, they have a very successful product, a lot of great reviews. They want to start a DTC Shopify store, but maybe they're a little bit like, I don't know where to begin and I don't know what mistakes to avoid here, what would you recommend them?
All right. So I think the missing piece, well, just taking that product listing that's successful as is and putting it on Shopify is not difficult. And you can even use the fulfillment. You could connect to Amazon and use that same Amazon fulfillment for your Shopify store. So like operations wise, this shouldn't be tough, but like you're now responsible for support too. So make sure you've got, there is a way for customers to contact you directly and you're able to deal with it, especially returns. Because like Amazon has kind of set the expectations here for you on this. So you could do better support than them for sure. But also you got to match their returns and their shipping, which can be a pain depending on your price points, your AOV. But building out, like with Amazon, you don't have to tell a story and you don't have to convince anybody because they showed up ready to shop. Like they're already found you on Amazon because they typed in keywords that you use. Versus to get them to your website, it's probably an ad that interrupted them while scrolling through Instagram, on their couch while they're also watching TV, right? You're competing up against a lot because the difference is interruption marketing. And so generally you need to agitate the pain. Like you need to indicate and show to them a pain or problem that you solve in a way that reminds them, if they have that, they'll recognize immediately how annoying it is. And then, oh, you have the solution for it. Now, this doesn't work for everything. It just, the brands that have that scenario, that's like, I solve a pain or problem. It's just a lot easier to make that pitch because you just need to find the people who have that pain or problem and go, man, I'd like to not have that pain or problem anymore. Like typical copywriting formula stuff. But I think that's the big difference is like thinking about it as a funnel. If you're an Amazon seller, you really never had to do that before.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Amazon did it for you. Now it's like you got to think about like, all right, what's the top of funnel? Now, how are we going to fill that top of funnel? Okay, how are we going to get people to our product page? Like what's their incentive to click forward? Once they're on that product page, what objections are they going to have? And they know Amazon. They don't know you. You're like just some psycho in a parking lot with your trunk top going, hey, can I have your credit card number? You're like, no, buddy, you cannot have my credit card number. What, are you out of your mind? Like, excuse me, I was going through my ex-girlfriend's photos on Instagram, and then you interrupted me with this nonsense. But if you were always selling on Amazon, you're just not in that mindset. But that's how you have to think of your customer, is you are the creepy guy in a van who's like, I got some speakers. Do you want to buy them? And the person in the parking lot's like, Jesus Christ, I just wanted to go make dinner. What is this? That is the mindset you need to be in.
I love that. So, it's a great analogy.
Well, I like that one.
So speaking of funnels, I'm glad you brought this up. So one of my friends, or not just one, I've had several, they've moved a lot of their FBA store stuff to Shopify. And honestly, they struggle a bit to make it happen. And I think part of it is because of what you're talking about. But Amazon, because it's so like aware, like the consumer's so aware and so high trust with Amazon, like the conversions tend to be quite good versus Shopify stores, they can often struggle depending on your setup. So when you are building this funnel, like what are some of the conversion rate optimization stuff that you'd recommend? Like what's the basic, like, yes, this is good, and then you start tweaking from this base? Like what would you recommend to increase that conversion rate?
So number one, it's got to look professional. Number two, I need to know who I'm buying from. And that's where an About Us page is important. Mm-hmm. If you look at like your traffic, you'll see people do visit an About Us page, especially if you map it on Google Analytics. You might notice people go like product about cart checkout. Like after I've decided, hey, I'm interested, like I want to buy this, but do I buy it from here? Then, they're going to check that About page. And then they're going to wonder, well, what happens if I have an issue? And so that's why on the About page, I also like to include the contact info, the returns info, have all of that, and your photo and who you are. And man, if you've got like a warehouse or any kind of physical location, please showcase it because it adds a lot of trust to the whole experience. And of course, I've got some very successful Shopify stores that have just the lousiest About pages you could come up with and don't show any physical location. But I think those are more established brands. When no one's heard of you outside of Amazon, you need to have a lot of trust indicators. You need to do a lot of objection busting. And so social proof, reviews, high quality content, specifically video content, right? I want an unboxing video. I want a usage video. I want, hey, I'm Kurt from Acme Corp and this is my widget and I'm really proud of it. I want to show it to you. Let's unbox it together and I can show you how it works. Like, give me a video of you face to camera because that indicates trust. And I realize how weird and awkward that could be when you've never done it before. But at the same time, even Meta released a report recently that said people don't necessarily want polished videos. They want native video. Native video means you have a phone in your pocket, go prop that up somewhere and film this, right? Hey, go on Amazon, get yourself a little tripod. They're not expensive, right? A little tabletop tripod. And,
I have a ring light right here, and not as bad as it used to be, but it just always reflected my glasses. So I always tell people like, hey, it's authentic by me not getting rid of it. Like I'm not a YouTuber guy. It's always going to be reflecting of there. Like, oh, great. So yes.
Yeah.
I do it for the authenticity.
Yes. They want that. And especially like if it's a younger audience, I think of it as pain threshold, right? I'm on YouTube. What is the crappiest content you are willing to watch? I bet it's inversely proportional to your age, right? If I'm like 19, I'm willing to watch what to me as a 41-year-old man seems like some terrible content. It's just different. Like they view it as like it's real. And so I think a lot of people, especially like millennials and older go, well, it's not professional level. It's not broadcast quality. Therefore, it's going to hurt me and I can't use it. And it isn't the case. And I think, video content really quite easy to make. And you host it for free, upload it to YouTube, and then embed it in a page. And you record it on your phone, and you can edit it with free software. Like, really, at this point, nothing at all stopping anyone from making video for their own website and including it. And yet, very few sites do it. So what must be the answer then, right? Well, it's a job to be done. It's work. I don't want to do it. But I think the reality is like, no one wants to be face to camera. It's awkward and weird. And that's why it works. Because if you're willing to do it and everybody else isn't, that's a big advantage. And that's a big trust indicator. Heck, why on your about page, why not have a video that's just like, hey, here's my story. I want to tell you in my own words. That's not that tough.
I love that, man. Yeah, I have a bunch of affiliate SEO friends, like they are basically allergic to showing their face. So like they have fake names, like none of them believe in any of the products that they sell, right? So it's like totally
as soon as you use a fake persona to sell your product, I'm sure it's very legitimate.
So there is a caveat. So I really want to sell a product not underneath my own name, but for a very specific reason, because it's a very nerdy topic. And I think it'd be hilarious to have like this gnome as the face of the brand.
Well, I think it's different when it's like really a mascot.
Yeah. But I
Mavis
totally
Beacon
get it.
teaches type. Mavis Beacon was not a real person.
Right. Yeah.
Hating myself with that one.
That goes back to the argument of like, personal brand versus like corporate brand. And I do think like as you grow your business, you should get further and further away from being the face of it, because that creates all sorts of problems down the road if you ever try to exit it. But in the beginning, it is how you stand out, because like Walmart can never be Greg. Walmart can never be Kurt. Walmart is the smile, rolling back prices, and corporate destroying small town type of thing, right? Like that's the vibe that they give, which is they can't give the same vibe as like a Kurt or a Greg. But with that said, have you helped businesses grow to the point where it is maybe that they are starting to take a step back from being the face of the brand and they go through that kind of process? Have you ever done that with a client?
No, because I think the only issue is when it's like the founder's name is baked into it. Yes, but even then, it's like, okay, then maybe you have an issue. But I don't think it's as detrimental as people think. Like we work with a brand, the Contract Shop, the digital downloads. They sell contracts. And that was owned by a woman, a lawyer, Christina Scalera, and she sold it to a guy. And so she's gone, but still very much the face of the brand, like still all over it. And they just use her content, they reuse her content, and the thing has continued and has survived. I don't think it's as big a problem as people think. It is a little weird when it's like your personal identity wrapped up in something that you sold and no longer have control of. But it's also like, hey, maybe you live forever.
Sort of the next Sham Wow forever, the Billy Mays of this product.
Yeah, Billy Mays, immortal. Every time I see OxyClean, Billy Mays here.
Billy Mays is a part of like my OG inspiration to get into marketing, because when I was a kid, I had TV in my room, couldn't sleep, 3, 4 a.m. Suddenly Billy Mays is coming on. Hey, got some knives to sell you, I'm like, wow, this guy is like crazy. How do I do this? But yeah, I think that all makes sense, man. And from my own personal experience, having sold personality branded businesses, I do tend to agree with you. There is like awkward phase, and often that could be deal structured away, where it's like a year, 2 years, something like that. It's like a slow transition, so it's not like a hard thing. But I do always give, I think I'm even said on your podcast, I would do give the example, like the Tonight Show. It has Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, Stephen Colbert now, but it's still the Tonight Show every time, even when one of these hosts leave, right? So yeah, I think that's good advice. We're coming up here towards the end of here, but I wanted to ask you a bit about the agency side of things. So you mentioned you got into this, you're kind of doing everything, and then you started on Shopify. But what was the reason why you started an agency? What was the inspiration for that?
Well, initially, I had attempted to build an e-commerce platform, and it didn't work. I mean, it turns out building an e-commerce platform is extraordinarily difficult. And we had office space. And so there were other local businesses that were aware of us and wildly misunderstood what we did. And like straight up, I had local business owners being like knocking on my door, being like, oh, we need a website. Is that what you do? And I was like, no, take your money and get out of here. Meanwhile, I'm trying to build an e-commerce platform that doesn't work. And so it was like, wait a second, hold on here. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to sell them. I sell a website. It was like, sell the first one. It's like an HTML brochure site for $800. And the next one, I'm like, pretty soon it's like, oh, I just sold a WordPress site for $8,000. Is this even legal? And I said, I did it literally I wrote a letter introducing myself, and I hand addressed just the business owner's first name. And then I got up at 5 a.m. and like slipped it under the front door of all these local businesses. And for 2 years, I got people calling me from that letter. Yeah. But I quickly figured out, like, wait a sec, if that worked, what if I just did it with large advertising agencies in downtown Chicago? Let's just move out of the suburbs and small businesses and just do the same thing for big agencies. And it worked. We ended up doing a site for Verizon, and we ended up doing a site for Hilton Hotels.
You would just like go into the Verizon building, like slipping envelopes underneath people's doors?
Yeah. Yes. Awesome. No one else does that. And so that they always got read. That was it. It was the same thing everybody else was doing. I just tweaked it. It's like everybody's cold calling, everybody's sending emails, but I was the only one that did a note that just says somebody's name written in marker on an envelope. 100% that's getting delivered.
That is so cool, man. I love that. When I was 19, I tried to start 19 or 20, I tried to start an SEO agency, and I was cold calling and I hated it, dude. So I ran these Facebook ads with a video of me, like 19-year-old, don't know anything, just know a little bit about SEO. When people click the ad and join my newsletter, there would be a video saying like, why should you hire me? It's like, because I'm the only marketer that didn't cold call you today. I actually used marketing to get you here.
That's pretty good.
It worked really well, but the problem was I had no idea what I was doing, so I didn't know how to accept credit card. I just gave up. I was working in the oil field as well, so I was like, "Oh my god, this is too much." I shut down the ads. But yeah, I love that, man. That's super cool. For anyone who wants to build an agency, what would be the advice you give them?
Oh, well, I think the answer is niche down, both on service offering, technology, if applicable, and vertical. You can always expand later. You can revise it. You can change it later, especially early on. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to understand your ideal customer profile, and for those people who are going to be like the initial clients to trust you, because they're going, all right, you're holding up the mirror. Like if I am in that vertical and use that technology and need that service offering, you're basically holding up the mirror at that point. And I'm like, I'll take a chance on this. And then I think initially, like, you don't want to jump in both feet with huge projects. You want to start with like, can you do a series of small projects, both to get the experience, dial things in, but also get the testimonials and have the social proof. And like, you do 6 months of that, 12 months of that, and you'll be very comfortable then moving your way up. When the big leagues call, you want to be prepared for it. But I think early on, it's going to be a lot of pitching yourself, being in the right place at the right time, establishing authority. One of the things I did for, building our Shopify leads early, just being helpful in Facebook groups. Facebook groups still around, still kicking, not
still
what they were.
Incredible today.
But still solid. And
Yeah.
I never sold anybody. Like, I really have no interest in doing it. And so I'd just be helpful in Facebook groups. And like, when it becomes time, then you have people trust you and you start getting referrals. It's like, well, maybe I should talk to that guy. He seems to know what he's doing. You want to be that guy who seems to know what he's doing early on.
So true, man. I like the advice on the scope. I feel like that does kill a lot of agency dreams fast, trying to like go too big too quick. Like before you have like a lot of agencies do this, they have support teams to help them with all these different things, right? Versus like the one man show type of thing. But yeah, I'm still a fan of Facebook groups. I think they still work great. It is kind of a dying platform versus what it used to be, but I still find that like Facebook does groups better than anywhere else still. Like maybe Discord,
I agree.
but
I don't think there's a reason for it to die, though. Oh, spam on Discord is so bad.
Oh, yeah, it's nuts. It's not as bad as spam on Facebook if you're running ads, but yeah, Discord spam. I joined one crypto group, biggest regret of my entire life. Like, what have I done? I need to block all these people. So, yeah. But yeah, I think that's great advice. Now, before we move into the rapid fire section, I do have one other question. Since you are cognizant of so many e-commerce stores and what's going on in the market, like, where do you see the trends going with e-commerce? Is there something that's starting to pop off that people should be paying attention to? Or is there something that they should be like, you need to watch out for this thing that might be down the road?
Well, okay. I think the immediate big like missed opportunity right now, if you're listening to this 2 years from now, probably not true anymore, but right now, YouTube Shorts, like YouTube, we talk about Facebook groups. And we're like, it's dying. It's not that it's dying. It's that it's just Facebook groups are not a priority for Meta. So like, what's the thing that is the priority for these various social media companies? Because the thing that's the priority is the one that they're going to make it easy and they want you to win. Right now, that's YouTube Shorts. A few years ago, it was TikTok, where it's like the algorithm would take almost anything and make it viral. But then, as it matures, that's going to go away. It's going to start getting harder and they're going to start optimizing for something else and something else will become the priority. Right now, YouTube Shorts is what TikTok was 2 years ago. So, maybe more. And so if you are at all interested in content creation, I think YouTube Shorts is the way to go. And I say that as someone who has never posted a YouTube short.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I had advice to give to myself, I'd probably be like, well, maybe get on that. Like if you're experienced with Instagram Reels or TikTok, that just portrait short form video, the same rules that worked there, is probably going to apply on YouTube Shorts as well. It's like, you got to have the hook. You got to get the person in that first second and a half to 3 seconds. And this whole thing's probably got to be about 15 to 30 seconds long. And as long as like you could do that, and then it's not selling. You don't want to sell them. You just want to get the attention. If you can be entertaining, go for it. Most people just aren't funny. I'm sorry. Every man thinks he's funny. He's probably not, myself included. But you're probably an expert on something, especially related to your product or industry. And so I think the easy way, the place to go is like, can you do something briefly interesting or unexpected? And then the other method, of course, is like, look at what is successful, look at what is trending. And a service like Mr. Beast's View Stats tool is good for that. Like that's a good place to start. Because when you get that early win, it's motivating, it's exciting. And so I think for a lot of people, if you don't want to spend the money on promoting the content, if you don't want to spend the money on like burning ad money to see what works, that's probably where I would go.
I totally agree with you. My issue with shorts is always like, I'm so long-winded. I always go over. It's like there's two famous writers, they were writing letters to each other. And it is like back in the 1900s, at the very end, it gets tinier and tinier with a PS, like, sorry, this letter is so long, I didn't have enough time to make it shorter.
Smart plan.
So, yeah. Cool, man.
So I wrote you a 2-page letter. I didn't have time to write you a 1-page letter. It's like something to that effect.
Exactly, yeah.
The beauty
as a
of
writer
copy editing.
myself, I really resonate with that. Okay, Matt. Well, we're in the rapid fire section here. So I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. You give me 3 quick answers. Are you ready?
Yes.
There was a bit of a hesitancy there.
I was checking to see if I had a sound effect that worked, and I really don't.
What? Oh, yes, the soundboard. I really needed to invest into a soundboard. This podcast was missing that. There we go. Thank you. This is the whole reason I brought you on, was to use the soundboard. Cool, man. All right, rapid fire question number 1. What are the best hidden growth opportunities in e-commerce right now?
All right. So people are ignoring SEO because they think like AI is going to destroy it. which means a lot of people are not investing in SEO right now. And so where's the AI getting the answers from? Where are tools from Perplexity getting the answers from? They're still doing Google searches. And it's easier than ever to create the content because ChatGPT and other tools can help you write it. So I think building content like long form ultimate guide content is a missed opportunity for a lot of folks. And then if I have that content and you could determine which one is successful, okay, can I then turn that, like just the quick best of hits of that, into short form video that is all engaging? How long could it take to make a 30-second video? I don't know, an hour, right? Spend that time, see if it works.
Dude, 100%. Like, I have a lot of SEO affiliate friends right now, still licking their wounds from all the Google updates. But my friends in e-commerce, they're rushing it with SEO. Like, they're doing crazy good stuff with AI and SEO. Like, it's next level, way better than what my affiliate friends used to be doing. So any of my affiliate friends listening in there, go start doing SEO for e-commerce. You'll be thankful you did. Better commissions too, better margins. Okay, second question. What are the best tools or resources in your view to help people create and manage a better Shopify store?
All right, so the one that I love is Matrixify. And this is not a sexy tool at all. It literally, it's a spreadsheet tool. It lets you take nearly anything in your Shopify store, like all of it, and export it as a spreadsheet, update it in a spreadsheet, and then import it back into Shopify. This is like the power user move if you can use Matrixify to manage things. Because like once you have this, now you could start doing some fancy data analysis or fancy updates. And so like what I like to do is, most people don't have their SEO meta descriptions written to be unique and have a call to action. I want to optimize for click-through rate. And so, because it's a big pain to do all of this, but if I have it in a spreadsheet and I can get ChatGPT or something similar to run in a spreadsheet, which you could do, I've done it in Google Sheets, then you can have it fill out the meta description for every product, every collection, every article,
nice.
So with like a couple hours of work, you and some assistance from our AI friend, you can have a store that was much more optimized than it was before. And sure, like a human would do a somewhat better job, but this is going to be way better than having never filled it out.
That is
so
amazing.
Yeah, Matrixify.
Is that an app on Shopify, or how do people get that?
Matrixify, it's an app in the Shopify App Store.
Okay, we'll
that like Shopify support often ends up recommending themselves for more complex.
Just don't talk to us. Use this.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we got a solution for you, buddy.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great tip. That's fantastic. Yeah. All right. Final question. Absolute hardest question. If you do not answer this well, we may not publish this episode. So absolutely no pressure. This is a chill show. But the final question, my friend, what has been your funniest moment since you started working in the whole e-commerce and Shopify industry?
Okay. This was years ago. We built a new Shopify store for a company that sold popcorn. Like, as a kid, you get like at Christmas, like the popcorn in a bucket and the various flavors and colors of popcorn. This is what these people sold. And they're like, hey, when do you want when's the site going live? When's the site going live? I'm like, well, it's ready. It's up to you. We have to connect the domain name and then like switch the domain name to Shopify and then it goes live. They're like, okay, great. Do that at this time on this day. Like, sure, no problem. Emailed, confirmed it, do it. And they're like, okay, well, and I start getting these frantic phone calls. I'm like, what's going on here? We talked about this. They're like, hey, what's going on? The site's not live. I was like, well, we changed the DNS. DNS could take up to 48 hours to update, 24 to 48 hours, but like realistically, it's a couple hours. What I did not know is that when they said, no one told me this before, was flip the website live, they had gathered the entirety of their staff, like warehouse everybody, and then like had a projection screen, and they thought this was like a TV, like a movie commercial, whatever. They thought this was like a Hollywood website type deal where the website would be flipped live and they would see it happen and then like everybody would cheer. This is what these people did. Only no one told me this. I didn't know that. And so when I told them, hey, DNS takes like 24 hours to propagate, furious, like livid. And I couldn't like, I wanted to be sympathetic, but at the same time, I was like, what? Come on.
Great. That's awesome. So how did you recover from the situation when they were like, how could you do this to us, Kurt?
I mean, I apologize, but I'm like, it is what it is. I didn't know you were doing this. And I don't think, I mean, they were mad. They disappeared from the site, went live. It was done. But yeah, no, that woman did not forgive me.
Just not getting that testimonial.
Yeah, no. It's just brutal.
Oh man, that is awesome. What a funny, like, misfortunate event, or unfortunate, unlucky event there. That is great. Cool, man. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for a long time, and maybe we'll bring you back for a even more in-depth podcast. But for my friends out there who are listening, whether they run a Shopify store, or maybe they want to take their FBA store and move it to Shopify, or just want to talk to you, what are the best places for them to go?
Oh man, well, Google me, Google Kurt Elster. I've got my website, kurtelster.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there, or that's got links to everywhere else. But check out the podcast; should be available wherever you get your podcast, the Unofficial Shopify Podcast. And of course, we do free consultations, 30 minutes for people who are looking to upgrade their Shopify store, need support, or migrate to Shopify. And that's you can find all that info on my website.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.